It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large with Warner Lewis. 60 minutes of smart talk radio with interesting guests from all walks of life begins right now. So sit back and enjoy. And now, from the flight deck, here's your host, Warner Lewis.
Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Here's truly Warner Lewis from the flight deck, and of course that means yet again some more smart talk radio is in your future, in this segment no exception. I've been looking forward to this for a while. We're going to be talking to one of the Sunflower State's own Dee Wallace. You know her from many works that she's done, probably originally as her role as the mother on E.T., but she also has done numerous films, and also for a while, fairly or unfairly, was sort of dubbed the Queen of Scream. She appeared in The Hills Have Eyes, The Howling, Frighteners, Critters, Halloween, etc., etc. Most recently, Rob Zombie's The Lords of Salem, and many other things. Indeed, she is also an author. We will talk about a book called Bright Light, etc., etc. Dee, how are you, my friend?
I'm so awesome. How are you?
You know what? In your home state of Kansas, it's a little bit chilly here, but, we're going to be all right.
Oh, I just took my dog for a walk, and it's 76.
Yeah. You know what? When we that pretty much wraps it up right there. Thank you so much for joining us. Anyway, well, let's do this. Let's this interview is airing across Northeast Kansas. The story has been told before, but share with our listeners, if you would. You have a very deep background from the Wyandotte County area, but share a little bit about the early years of Dee Wallace in Northeast Kansas.
Well, my early years, wow. I grew up in a very poor household, but a very talented household. My father was a salesman. My mom was a secretary. But also, my dad was quite an entrepreneur and started a lot of different businesses that unfortunately met early demises. But he worked for Dell Comics, and Dell Comics was a subsidiary of Walt Disney. So somehow he created the opportunity for me to be the Dell Comic Queen. And so I did a lot of personal relations and appearances with Walt Disney and Robert Wagner and a lot of the people that Disney represented as they came through for their pictures. My mother was also an amazing actress, and she would give humorous and dramatic readings around town, often for the mayor. And so even though we had no money, we had a lot of culture. And my mother would barter her services so that I could have violin lessons and elocution lessons. And so I was taught to go out and be able to perform as my mother did, and so did my brother. And so we got little tastes of Hollywood and being in the limelight when we were in Kansas, and at the same time trying to figure out how we were going to put food on the table.
Right.
So it was a very interesting dichotomy. My early childhood, I was raised really by my fraternal grandmother, because my mother was at work from, she left on the bus at 7 in the morning and got home just in time to fix dinner.
Yeah. So at an early age, you're exposed at least to the theater and certainly to a world above and beyond your neighborhood and your family. Was that, it's been a little while, but looking back on that, was that something that really ignited a spark in you, or was it just sort of something you thought was just kind of, this is what I do?
Well, I thought it was a game. Kids they just think it's fun. I'd go out and I'd do a modeling job and I'd get to keep my dress.
That's pretty fun.
That was nifty. So I think the moment that I really knew I wanted to do what I'm doing, or knew that I had to do something creative, was I was sitting in church at Easter, and my mother was giving this 30-minute dramatic reading about the crucifixion. And people, there was not a seat in the church. People from 4 states around Kansas came down to see my mother do these readings. Now, I didn't know that they were there for my mom at the time. I just knew. But she was doing this reading, and I looked around, and grown men and women were weeping by me. And I went, oh, my God, my mom did this.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
And I thought, I want to touch people like this. I want to touch people like my mommy. And here I am hopefully doing that. And certainly not in religious circles. And some people may go, well, yeah, you do horror films, a lot, Dee. But they're much closer, I think, than most people think. I've been studying fear for all my career, and I can tell you the thing we're most afraid of is ourselves.
Yeah, no question. That really puts an interesting light on this. I know they were not revivalists, but we have had those that have come from a background of parents that led revivals, and they would get that same intensity there. Dee, you taught school for a while. I'm curious as to, undoubtedly, you've run into former students from time to time, but the idea that someone goes to the theater, sees E.T., may not be aware of what has happened to you, and suddenly, oh my God, look, there's Miss Wallace is on the movies.
Well, I actually hear from a lot of my past students.
Yeah.
From time to time on Facebook, and lots of them email me. Some of them are clients of mine. So, I loved teaching, and yet I knew that wasn't where I was going to end up and where I wanted to stay. So I graduated from Wyandotte High School, went to KU, got my degree in education and theater, and taught a year of high school at Washington High. And I thought, if I'm ever going to try my dream, I better get out of here and try it.
Right.
I had to work my way through college, so it took me 5.5 years, and time was ticking. So,
do you work in Lawrence, or do you work back in Kansas City area?
I worked in Kansas City at Bethany Hospital in the personnel department.
Oh, good for you.
And I worked on Tuesdays and Thursdays all day, and drove Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and took 18 hours in those 3 days. And then oftentimes I would perform at night or perform on the weekends in whatever I could get, dancing or acting. I started out, I wanted to be, and I was a dancer for a short time with the American Baroque Dance Theater in Kansas City.
Uh-huh.
And my teacher that I'd studied with all my life was a German ballerina who had escaped Germany during the war. And she took me aside and she said, I'm going to do you a big favor. You'll always be good. You'll never be great. And if you want to be great at something, do something else. And
wow.
I went, okay, well, the next best thing I know what to do is act.
Yeah.
And so that's what I committed myself to and went off to New York. I'd never been out of Kansas in my life, and left for New York to claim my fame and fortune. And just a little over 5 years later, I was starring in E.T.
Wow. Dee, let me ask you something. You headed east versus heading west. That was obviously a conscious decision. I'm curious, did that mean necessarily you were interested in the stage versus the big screen, or tell us why New York versus L.A.?
I don't think I can tell you.
Okay.
I think it was one of those subconscious things, but we didn't have a lot of film and television in Kansas City, but we had a lot of stage.
Right, that's true.
And what work I had done had been at the Jewish Community Center and on stage. So I don't think it ever occurred to me, quite frankly, until I was in New York for 2 years, to go to L.A. that I could do film and television. But in New York, I was really successful at booking commercials. I just had that Kansas youthful, corn-fed, pretty Midwestern face.
Right.
And so my naivete served me really well, and I was very successful at commercials. And at the end of my 2 years, a lot of people were going out to L.A. There was a big joke, actually, that went around the acting community that the actor from L.A. and the actor from New York met in Kansas, and they said, go back, there's no work. So a lot of my friends went out there, and they would get a hold of me and go, look, come out. We think you're going to do really well here. So I booked a dancing gig in this industrial show for Oldsmobile, and we traveled across the country and ended up in L.A. And I said, okay, I'm going to stay for a couple of weeks and see. And one of my friends let me, stay with them and live with them. And I went out to see a few agents, and they wanted me. And they said, oh, you're going to do really good here. So I took a shot, just like I took a shot in New York, Right. And one of my friends said, look, you do a lot of commercials. You set me up with a interview with your commercial agent, and I'm with Brett Adams, and I'll set you up with an interview for them for theatrical. And so we both got each other an interview, and we both got the other agent. So we were, I was kind of off and running there, and again, had quite a lot of success booking commercials. And that helped me make a living until I could get established in doing co-star parts. And, you climb your way up. I just happened to climb up a lot faster than a lot of people.
Right. Again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio. We got a good segment going here with a tremendous talent, Dee Wallace, from Kansas originally. You just heard her describe her journey from Bethany Hospital to Los Angeles, California. Dee, we have had several people in the acting profession. I'm thinking Stanley Livingston is one. Dawn Wells was on recently. You kind of had a similar experience, and by that I mean you were, fairly or not, typecast with a tremendously successful project called E.T. Did you view that as sort of a blessing and a curse at the same time? Tell us about your feelings about that role.
Well, yeah, I think it's really kind of a metaphor of life, because before I did E.T., I played hookers and call girls and astronauts and all kinds of parts. After E.T., the role of Mary was, the picture affected people so much, and the role of Mary, I really became everybody's mom. And in this country, we like to cubbyhole what actors do.
Yeah.
In Europe, they like to, you're just expected to be able to do everything. But in America, we like to go, okay, this is what Dee does. And so in that, from that point of view, it was a negative to a certain degree. At the same time, am I incredibly blessed to have been a part of that movie that sprung my career and, keeps me working even today? Absolutely. It was up to me to kind of say no sometimes and create the possibilities of some other roles, which I've done, although, the majority of what I have played every kind of mother in the world. And that's why I was so excited when The Frighteners came along, because it gave me an opportunity to play a vastly different arc. My upcoming recurring role on GRIMM is a mother, but just the writers are giving me just some really outstanding arcs to play and emotional worlds to play. It's just really exciting.
And you're making the debut is on NBC on the 31st of January, correct?
It's actually the 24th.
Okay.
They've moved it up, yeah.
All right. Well, my gosh, the world cannot wait. Okay, here's one. Man, here we are. We are the mom on ET. We're like every mom. We go to the store. We have kids, and the kids. What in the world are kids doing upstairs, and what's going on here? A role that so many people can identify with, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, we've got The Howling, and we have The Lords of Salem over time, etc. Any thought at all that some of those roles might have been a reaction against Miss Normal, so to speak, on ET?
Oh no. What those roles come from is an actor's hunger to go into every aspect of the American character that they can. Actors love to act, and so the more varied and different roles and emotions you can get into, the happier we are. I mean, Cujo to this day is my favorite film because I got to do so much acting.
Mm-hmm. Again, I want to be careful. There's so much. We have some limited time, but there's a lot I want to talk about here, and you've got quite a background here. I want to touch briefly, if we could. We've talked about GRIMM. We've talked a little bit about your background. I want to talk a little bit about Bright Light. I know that it was a very, very meaningful piece for you. Would you share with our listeners, a little bit? It recounts a lot of your childhood and some other journeys that you've taken, including the suicide of your father. Would you give us a little bit of a setup about Bright Lights?
Well, Bright Light is really kind of an autobiography, but it's told through the lens of my acting career. And what the intention was behind Bright Light is to share with everyone the power that I've learned in my life, that you always, always have the free will to create yourself again in every moment. And that's a powerful, joyful freedom once you learn that this gift of free will was given to us so that we could actually make choices and take actions about what we want our life to be, no matter what's happened. No matter if my dad was an alcoholic and committed suicide, that's my story. That's what happened to me. What I do with that story is what my responsibility is in this lifetime. And so Bright Light is, you're going to laugh your socks off. There's a lot of poignant things in there. And there's a huge story of, we've all been abused and abandoned and let down and betrayed. That's kind of the story of the human experience. And you can reclaim your freedom and your joy and your power, but you have to do it. If you keep blaming everybody that's done it to you, you're never going to really create you the way you want to in this lifetime.
Like many people in the creative profession, angst, sorrow, anxiety, etc., play a major role, probably in most definitely who they are, and it certainly helps them. I'm curious as to, was there a particular moment that you knew you wanted to share all this in a work like Bright Light, or how did that really come up? What was that moment, that trigger moment maybe for you?
It was after Christopher Stone, my husband of 18 years, died of a heart attack, and that was during the Frighteners. And when I walked back into this house with my 7-year-old little girl, I put her to bed and I dropped to my knees and I said, I don't want to be angry anymore. I don't want to be a victim. I want my light back. And these are the key words, I want a way we can heal ourselves. And at that moment, I started hearing and being a clairaudient channel. I started getting very clear messages. And the first one was, use the light within you to heal yourself. And I went, what the heck does that mean?
Right.
Now, I have a very clear understanding of what that means, that, again, we have a responsibility to direct our own energy, to decide the thoughts we think and the perspectives of the world that we hold, and to know absolutely and unconditionally that everything is about love.
You're very focused, and you've got a lot of energy, and you're very committed and driven. I'm curious, Dee, from your own observation, how much of that came in some way, shape, or form from your mother or your father, or both?
Oh, both. And my grandmother, my fraternal grandmother raised me. Betty Bowers. A lot of people still remember her in Kansas City, and I had my maternal grandmother also was. All the women in my family were just really strong in different ways, but very, very, very strong women, and my dad was unbelievably creative and sensitive. And, you put that all together, powerful sensitivity, well, that's an actor, that's a dancer, that's a creative. And I lost that, and I talk about that in Bright Light. I lost that for years because I became a victim and kept blaming everybody. And when I finally brought myself out of that and brought myself back into balance, just everything I started to do and create, I loved. And when you live in a life like that, you never go to work a day in your life because you choose to love everything that you do. You choose to be excited about life.
Right.
And then you create things that people tell you are impossible for you to create. Like every specialist that I went to said I would never have children. My beautiful daughter is now 25 and starting her career.
Right, and she's going to be starring in her first film. Is it this year, or has that already happened? I apologize.
No, that's fine. It just came out, and she and I, actually, she's the star of this next film with Billy Zane and Misha Barton. I have a supporting part in it, and I'm very happy to be passing the sword, passing the baton on to my very talented daughter. I'm not done yet. I've just booked another 2 films and have this beautiful part on GRIMM, and my healing work that I do, my radio shows that I do, my books that I'm writing. So I'm still out there thriving and thrilled that she's starting a career that gives her so much joy also.
Again, we're with Dee Wallace, talented actress, author, acting teacher, guidance counselor, probably in many ways. Dee, along those lines, because of your experience, spiritual, acting, and otherwise, you are in the midst in the Hollywood community with lots of very, very talented people, but many, I would think by your own estimation, sort of misdirected and missing what you would probably define as that sort of inner bright light. I know you're not a revivalist, but are there times you do want to reach out, or you're able to reach out and give some people, get them out of sort of that dark zone?
Oh, I do it every day, honey. I do it every day. I have 2 international radio shows on a week. They're free call-in shows, and I do private sessions all over the world with people every day. So my quest in life is to teach people and remind people that loving themselves is the most important thing they can do. We're very rarely taught that concept, to love ourselves as the first duty we have to ourselves. Most of us are taught to give ourselves up for everybody else. And I know that when you truly move into loving and honoring the magnificence of who you are able to serve everyone else in a much higher way.
Dee, as you look around, and again, you've been a part of that Hollywood landscape for a long time. You've been very, very successful. You continue to get work. You obviously stay very, very busy. Has Hollywood changed? Has the environment there changed a lot? And if it has, is that a good thing or not?
Well, I think like life, it's continually changing. Sure. I think you're seeing incredible work on television these days, especially on the alternative channels like HBO and Showtime. I think you're seeing a lot more balance in the work between men and women as directors and actors. And, I mean, you know, the tour de force of women in the Oscar roles this year is just unbelievable, the work that's been done. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the studios now are run less by creatives and more by big business. So you are seeing a huge influx of the green screen films, you know, the big action, shoot 'em up, kill 'em, RoboCop kind of films. But there's also been a real interest and focus on bringing the smaller relationship films back, like August Osage County. Of course, you know, when you have people like Meryl Streep and Julia Roberts agreeing to come on board to do those films, we're more inclined to be able to get them funded. So, of course, there's an ongoing change, and I often hear people say to me, "Oh my God, doesn't it worry you being an older actress in the movie industry?" And I'm going, "Why would it worry me? I'm working all the time." So, again, I think a lot of it is, do you accept other people's fears and limitations, or do you create what you want?
Well, we could talk for a long time. We're running out of time here, unfortunately. Our guest has been Dee Wallace. You know her as many things. She is an author. She's an actress. There is a tremendous spiritual side to her, as you've been hearing. And thank you, for the body of work that you've done, and thank you for your ongoing work, sort of helping humanity on even a larger scale. Dee, do you get back into this area much at all?
I get back to Kansas City, which I still call home, by the way, a couple of times a year.
Well, good to know that. Hey, listen, again, GRIMM making the debut as Monroe's mother, January the 24th. The work is Bright Light. Dee, how can people get a copy of the book and also kind of follow what's going on with Dee Wallace?
My website is iamdeewallace.com. If you want to order Bright Light through that and ask me to sign it for you, I'd be happy to do that. Otherwise, you can get it at Barnes & Noble, or the easiest way probably is to order it on Amazon.
Well, thanks for spending a part of your day here with us, and have a great year, and would love to have you on again. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, and you guys stay warm now.
Yes, ma'am. We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.